Hello and welcome to the big picture. The diplomatic coup managed by Narendra Modi by getting all the SAARC leaders to attend the swearing-in ceremony was marked especially by the visit of Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. The one-on-one meeting between the two leaders yesterday has been welcomed and both sides have indicated it was a fruitful meeting. However, despite the general sense of warmth and cordiality displayed during the meeting, words of caution is being heard on both sides of the border. These mixed reactions apart, even the new External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj has also sounded a note of caution today, saying unless terrorist incidents stop, it would be difficult to hold talks. So despite the atmospherics and words of encouragement, can we call this a new beginning in the troubled relations between the two countries? We will discuss this today with Vivek Karju, former ambassador, Rana Banerjee, security analyst and former special secretary in the Cabinet Secretariat, Vinod Sharma, political editor of the Hindustan Times. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Karju, we have been discussing Pakistan over the last several months and years also. You think that the atmosphere has changed now following the meeting between the two leaders yesterday?
I think, if you permit me to say, I find the use of the word coup a little odd. It was a great, because coups means overthrow of legitimate authority. This by itself was an entirely legitimate exercise and an initiative, and a very bold and decisive initiative in keeping with the decisive mandate which Mr. Modi has received. During the election campaign, Mr. Modi gave an interview, which was a written interview to a leading English daily, where I think he spelt out in detail his vision of the relationship. And in essence, he said that India and Pakistan need to build trust, and that trust cannot be built unless terrorism is eliminated. He reiterated this point to the Pakistan Prime Minister. He also spelt out in that interview his vision that there should be a full-fledged and wide-ranging cooperative, indeed a comprehensive cooperative relationship between the two countries. But at different places in the same interview, he mentioned that that trust is difficult to build in the absence of an atmosphere free from terrorism. So when you talk of an atmosphere, I think the onus is on the Pakistanis. Mr. Nawaz Sharif came here, he took some time. I believe that the Pakistani state coercive apparatus, that is the army, controls its foreign and security policies in respect of India. And that they did send us a signal. And Herat, and the Afghan president on our soil, said it was carried out by the Lashkar-e-Toiba. And we know the Lashkar-e-Toiba's links with the Pakistani establishment. So that signal was notwithstanding, Mr. Modi went out of his way, and the very fact that contacts between the foreign secretaries are supposed to take place itself is an indication of a forward-looking view. But the caution expressed by the External Affairs Minister is only reinforcing which Mr. Modi has already said as Prime Minister.
Okay, we are joined in now on the phone line from Islamabad, Pakistan by Mosharraf Zaidi, a columnist with the News Pakistan. Mosharraf, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. How is Pakistan viewing this visit of your Prime Minister to India and the talks which have been held with the Indian Prime Minister?
I think the entire nation, we're much smaller than India, but still 200 million of us. But I can speak for myself, and I think that it was a very successful visit. I think it was a very good thing for Prime Minister Modi to have invited the SAARC leaders. And I think it was even better that Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif courageously and boldly accepted the invitation, visited India, met with Prime Minister Modi.
So Zaidi, why do you say boldly? What was bold about it?
Well, I think it's very bold given the context within which this happened. The The attack in Herat has already been mentioned, and obviously mostly we can only speculate about, who did it and what happened. But obviously he knew going into the trip that in India this thing would be a visible sort of part of the discourse. And not only was the boldness, related to what he would face in India, but also, what he's been facing within Pakistan, which is a pretty robust opposition to him and his government, partly fueled by the ongoing institutional dynamics and the search for equilibrium that this democracy is still struggling with, given that we're still a youthful and young democracy compared to India's much more mature and evolved system.
Okay. Mr. Banerjee, one of the things which Sartaj Aziz, who had accompanied him, said after he went back to Pakistan was that this meeting had a clear strategic vision. What kind of a strategic vision could have been there in the context of what Mr. Karju said and,
Well, to begin with, I would agree with both the averments of Mr. Karju and also Mr. Musharraf Zaidi from their individual perspectives, different perspectives. As regards Mr. Sartaj Aziz's comment in the press conference that he held about, strategic vision, it pertained to the need for Pakistan to keep engaging India in a process of talks, because the signals that they have been receiving earlier have been that the comprehensive dialogue is more or less run its course and the Indians are dragging their feet, and unless they could see some visible, forward movement on the issues that have been stressed even in the talks, the very process of talks had sort of dropped off. To that extent, now that they have this undertaking for Foreign Secretary level talks to be resumed, it is certainly an achievement which they could say as having gone better than expected. The second aspect is, of course, the personal rapport between two new leaders who've been meeting for the first time. And I think that also the atmospherics of it were fairly good.
Vinod, have the campaign rhetorics been forgotten? Is it something? Is it a thing of the past? Has a new chapter been opened now?
Frankly, I have been very skeptical about Mr. Modi on Pakistan, given the nature of the campaign that he ran. And I must admit that I was quite pleasantly surprised by his audacious move. And I've called it audacious diplomacy on the part of our Prime Minister and that of the Pakistani Prime Minister. Yes, of course, other SAARC leaders were there, but we can discuss that separately because each one of them responded to the invite, and there was a self-vested interest there.
Right.
I mean, like Rajapaksa, it was a great golden opportunity to break his isolation vis-a-vis India. Similarly, Bangladesh has certain issues to be settled, like the enclaves and the Teesta Accord. And, with regard to Maldives, their democracy has been a bit shaky and all. Yeah. Anyway, so it was audacious diplomacy on the part of Mr. Narendra Modi in the backdrop of the kind of campaign he ran. And there was an objective which was welcome, which is that he didn't want to live with that belligerence, that, bad taste in the mouth vis-a-vis Pakistan. He tried to negate it and neutralize it very early in his regime. In fact, even before he could take office, he's done it. And which is, I think, a very, very positive thing in a very tortuous and very, very difficult relationship. Because, there has to be an atmosphere congenial for communications to remain alive between the two countries.
Right.
And it was very important in that aspect.
So secondly, that has been established.
That has been established. Secondly, from the perspective of Mr. Nawaz Sharif, you see, Nawaz Sharif, you must understand, my friend Mr. Karju has mentioned the interview. There was another interview where, there were some comments made by our Prime Minister vis-a-vis Dawood Ibrahim, and he said it in the context of the operation carried out by the US Marines inside Pakistan. And he said these things aren't stated and communicated through the media. Now, this got interpreted in Pakistan as if, he was planning something of that nature against Pakistan, and he got painted in certain sections there, some very, very inspired sections, like the extreme right-wing fringe, that he was a great adventurist, So I think there was a need for him to carry out a corrective there, which is very, very wisely done it. I mean, I must compliment him for that. Now, Sartaj Aziz today, look, when Nawaz Sharif comes here, He brings certain gifts for him, and he returns the gift one shawl he gave for the mother of Nawaz Sharif, and they sort of connected,
they connected
on their affection for their mothers, that's people know about it, so one needn't dilate on that. But, he did not meet the Hurriyat leadership, mind you. And Sartaj Aziz was asked questions at his press conference today, which I watched fully, that why did you not meet the Hurriyat? And his answer to that was that, look, this was not an occasion where we were having a substantive discussion on the issue of Kashmir, which required some consultation with the Hurriyat before we get to the negotiating table, A. B, he said, you see, we have told the Indian leadership that we would like to pick up the thread from where we left in 1996, via the Lahore Declaration. 1999 Lahore Declaration, where the Kashmir issue is explicit in its mention, the outstanding disputes, So they were very cautiously skirting any landmine while their delegation was here. And I got to know also for the first time, I didn't read it in any paper, correct me if I am wrong, that there was also one-on-one between the two leaders, besides away from the delegations of the two sides, That is what Sartaj Aziz said. And what happened at that one-on-one is a matter of chemistry.
Mr. Kardju, you wanted to say, I want another thing. He was mentioning 1999. Sartaj Aziz also mentioned 1999. We want to revive.
And Mr. Kardju was actually very much active there, and who knows it better than him?
Historic, three things are being said. It's a historic beginning, it's a new beginning, and these are the words being used. What happens to all that has happened between 1999 and 2014?
As far as Mr. Modi's interviews are concerned, I would urge all my friends, and our friends in Pakistan especially, to read that interview in the Times of India. I think it was in the Times of India.
Yeah, I read that.
Two-page interview, and there he really, and some detail has spelt out his vision of the bilateral India-Pakistan relationship. No, the reason why I'm mentioning it is that the campaign rhetoric is one thing. But a reasoned interview which you give, as you well know, you gentlemen from the media know it better than me, is another thing altogether. Now, as far as beginnings are concerned, this has been a good beginning, no doubt. The historic part of it was that the Indian Prime Minister, or the Prime Minister designate, invited all the SAARC leaders, and therefore, in the context of SAARC as an organization, this holds great promise. So, in that context...
I'm talking of the India-Pakistan...
Now, but please, the visit itself was in the context of the SAARC.
Right.
Or the invitation to SAARC leaders. Now, what happens is that India-Pakistan consumes the attention of our media. Fortunately, it did not overshadow everything. So, to that extent, both the government's media managers as well as the Indian media itself showed a remarkable maturity, which was really welcome. Now, we'll have to see how this proceeds. We really will have to look at it closely. From Mr. Modi's side, he has made it very evident that he wishes to move ahead, and that the issues that are in contention will naturally be addressed. But his vision of diplomacy includes, in large measure, economic diplomacy. And it is there that the two countries can really build a cooperative relationship.
No, but I was talking to you about, if we say this is a new beginning, or if anybody says this is a new beginning, what happens to all that has happened between 1999 and 2014?
Look, the
because
past...
I would like to ask the same question to our
the
Pakistan
past
also.
And history has to be sometimes overcome. I'm not underrating the impact of the past and the memories which history gives us, which make us very cautious. And that makes me cautious today. I was there, as Vinod says, at Lahore. And 3 months later came Kargil, which was bewildering. Because the real problem with Kargil was that it was so unnecessary for the Pakistanis to do it. But who did it? It was the army. Which brings me to this fact, And I think Mr. Zaidi also mentioned
And
that.
you have been consistently of the view for the last several times that we have had
Yes.
discussions that it is the army which controls Pakistan.
No. Please. What I am saying, what my view today is that the army and has allowed the civilian government for good reason, and that the ambit of authority of the civilian government on
Has improved?
many matters concerning Pakistan is there.
Has improved, you mean?
Let me complete this. The Pakistan government too, the civilian establishment is also purposefully expanding its ambit of ambit and freedom of action. But on India policy, on security issues, I do believe that while the civilian leadership has a role now, but the final authority rests with the army chief and his commanders.
Would you agree with that, Zaidi?
No, I mean, well, look, I think that it's not a secret that, Pakistan has a complex history in terms of the military and the civilians getting along, especially on issues of India, and I would actually expand that to include issues related to Afghanistan, and I would expand it to include issues related to the United States. These are issues that are, and these relationships are existential for Pakistan. They have been in the past. They will continue to be for the foreseeable future. And therefore, I think the military has an appetite to be very involved and to know exactly what's happening. So I think as democracy grows and matures, one of the tasks for Democrats, whether they're in government or outside government, is to help build the case that the space for civilians must be unfettered and unquestioned, and that there is a legitimate room, obviously, for the national security establishment to inform decisions, but that decisions have to be taken by civilians. I think that's an internal dynamic in Pakistan, which has a significant, which is significantly informed by events in places like India and Afghanistan and the U.S. But ultimately, this is a dynamic that's going to be resolved, and and will be resolved favorably for Pakistani democracy, not in the short term and not overnight. In the meantime, if civilian leaders like Nawaz Sharif are able to take bold and courageous decisions, like reaching out and accepting this invitation, and then following it up with substantive wins. And that doesn't mean that we're going to resolve Kashmir or Siachen or in the case of the interests of, Indians, obviously 2611. But even smaller things like the normalization of Wagah, for example, in terms of trade. And so if we can build small victories that have a demonstrably positive effect for the region, and both constituencies, the right-winger, or rather the extreme right-wingers that are to the right of Mr. Modi, which is very right, and the hardliners and the hawks in Pakistan, both on the religious side and even some left-leaning folks that are wary of India. If we can demonstrate to them that there can be benefits without compromising on our core issues, then I think, we will have a way forward. And I think that Mr. Modi is enterprising enough to chart that path for India, and I certainly have confidence that Prime Minister Sharif will be able to do the same here.
Very quickly, you wanted to react very quickly?
No, I think in large measure, how I interpret Mr. Zaidi is that he's agreeing with
I think he's agreeing with that. Mr. Banerjee, when it's easier said than done. We have seen this torturous relationship between the two countries in the last 2 decades. We see that things are improving, again it goes back. You think there is anything different now? And one second thing, with the same question which I asked Mr. Karju earlier, what all has happened between 1999 and 2014? Some of the initiatives taken by Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, or even after 2004. What happens to all that?
No, none of it can be de-linked with the relationship as it evolves. And I think it will be much of the same, and things will change, if at all, very slowly. Even the relationship inside Pakistan, what Mr. Zaidi said, I've been saying the same thing, that it will be for the civilian leadership to incrementally gnaw away at the type of control that the deep establishment has had in Pakistan over issues of security policy. But even within those parameters, it's a good thing that what has happened, because he took his time, 2 days, and then he did come. The military must have signaled assent to the move. In the overall assessment that it would be otherwise isolating Pakistan, and secondly, the promise of economic diplomacy, normalizing the trade relationship, could benefit only both the countries. And the reference to the October 99
the Lahore Declaration.
Lahore Declaration, and Mr. Nawaz Sharif specifically mentioned that he would like to take it up from where he let off in October 99.
Right.
So when he mentions October 99, he is signaling that but for the coup, maybe I could have, taken it further even then. So that is the signal that he is giving to his own domestic audience, as I read it.
It's very interesting. Both of them, he is talking about October 99 in a very symbolic gesture where he goes and meets Vajpayee and spends time with him. And then he goes back to Pakistan, talks of, carrying forward from October 99.
You see, our back channel during until 2007 was very, very successful. And I think that the government at that time...
Until 2007.
Yeah, when Musharraf ran into trouble in his own country. And at that time, I know that the UPA regime was bouncing questions of even the BJP while they were engaging there. And the broad paradigm that emerged from that discourse behind the scenes was that we should now give up the whole idea of new borders, and from new borders let us move to no borders, And that effectively meant that you keep what you have and we keep what we have, and let people move freely across the line of control.
That was Manmohan Singh's.
Yeah, no, that was India's idea, but Musharraf patented it, and India was too happy about it.
Yes,
that there was something which they wanted to say, but it was coming from Musharraf. And I remember Mr. Yashwant Sinha having told our Prime Minister, that look, you tell him that I am too new to diplomacy, I have just taken over, then you tell me what to do, ask Musharraf what to do. You get my point? So there was some degree of coordination happening between the BJP
in the Congress.
Now, that I don't know whether he can go back to that, Mr. Nawaz Sharif, because remember during that period I had the most wonderful sight of seeing Chaudhry Shujat, who comes from a party which prides itself as the torchbearer of the Pakistan movement, and he telling the Hurriyat leaders in Pakistan when they visited that, UN resolutions are all passe, just get over it and let's move ahead, And even coming here in India. So a lot of very creative things happened at that time, and we thought that Musharraf had the single window clearance authority in that country. But unfortunately, things didn't work out. But maybe, as Vivek says, that you can pick up some finer points, some creative points from that interaction and try and sell it to this new regime. But mind you, one thing which has happened, which is marvelous, that there is a broad consensus amongst parties that are represented in Parliament in Pakistan in favor of building relations with India. Even parties like Jamaat-e-Islam or Fazlur Rahman and others, who are Deobandis and all, they say that our enemy number one is America, and if America has to leave from this country, we have to build relations with India. Now, this BJP-led initiative has established a similar consensus in India, political consensus in India, because it was the BJP which was skeptical all the while about engaging with Pakistan. So I think in terms of popular politics, in terms of a consensus, a political consensus in India, today a political consensus exists in India. Yes, of course, the opposition of the day will question Mr. Modi, will caution Mr. Modi, will try and mark its presence in this discourse. But there is a broad consensus, and we should celebrate that.
Mr. Before I go to Zaidi.
No, please. The point,
yes.
I think there is no one sane and sensible in India or in Pakistan who doesn't want this acrimonious relationship to get transformed. The problem is there are problems to it, and that is why I think people like me are a little cautious.
Okay.
Yes, of course.
Musharraf,
cautious.
That is all.
Musharraf, the question is, Vinod says that there is also some kind of a consensus in the Pakistan Parliament. Do you agree with that? One. Second thing is, when Nawaz Sharif says that we will pick up from 1999, how does it echo in Pakistan?
Well, I think there's an element of romance that the Prime Minister has with his previous term, But that's not such a big problem because on this particular issue, the last 15 years have actually helped build that consensus so that Nawaz Sharif was much more of a lonely figure in 1999 in terms of reaching out at the border than he is today. Today, you'll find even right-wing political parties like the Jamiyat Ulama Islam Fazlur Rahman group who have lauded his decision and have supported it despite the fact that they oppose him on many other fronts. As far as the big political parties are concerned, all of them have expressed their support for the initiative and for whatever future progress is made. Obviously, there'll be things that will make people uncomfortable and squeamish. But I think that's part of leadership, and moral leadership requires you to go out and do things slightly differently and then face the music when you get back home and explain to the people that are playing the music for you that this is what we're thinking and this is how we're planning to move forward. And without really damaging anything that we stand for, there's a lot of things that need to be exploited and explored in the interests of both countries. I think, as I said before, I think if there's two national leaders, two national figures in both countries who can pull that off successfully, I think it's Modi and Sharif.
Yes. Very quickly, I want
very quickly, 2 points. I think to answer your question specifically on whether the threats can be picked up in all that, amidst all that's happened in the 15 years. Yes, in some areas, threats can be picked up in terms of interests in moving ahead on subjects like commerce, agriculture, industry, cooperation. There are some areas where things had happened in these 15 years and Mr. Nawaz Sharif will have to decide whether he wants to go on that path or not. Like, say, there was the back channel and there were these 4 points which are much discussed. Mr. Nawaz Sharif has a different viewpoint on Jammu and Kashmir. There is no secret on that. There are certain areas on which Indian thinking has got transformed.
Exactly.
So I think
2008 has been after 2008 there has been
Indian thinking has got transformed on certain areas which Pakistan thinks were low-hanging fruit.
Right.
Now, we'll have to really see when we get down to the nitty-gritty on how the two sides approach this.
Where do we start getting into the nitty-gritties, Mr. Banerjee?
Well, visa relaxations are already there on the anvil. Then Silk Creek could be one area where there is a considerable amount of work done. There has been a land survey which was jointly carried out and some missing pillars have been discovered. So taking that as a base now, it's a question of deciding on the eastern boundary as per the 1914 map or the median line boundary which we want as per the 1924 map. So it's a matter of adjustment. It could be done in a discussion.
I think that, we must take note of the speech Mr. Nawaz Sharif made.
One second, my question, very quickly, my question is that would this be reciprocated in Pakistan? What kind of pressures would, because there the pressure is that, why didn't you talk of Kashmir? He has been asked this question.
Very fortunately, in recent years, and it never used to happen in the early 90s, the early 90s was a period where in Pakistan, they didn't even, certain right-wingers didn't even want Siachen discussed because they thought it was integral to Kashmir. But now it has gotten de-linked, luckily. I think that the first opportunity available to the two prime ministers were business-minded. One is a businessman, the other is business-friendly, is to push trade. And Nawaz Sharif said it in a speech today in Lahore, and I was watching that we have to build good relations with our neighbors in order to repair our economy. Okay. And the same is the agenda of Mr. Narendra Modi. He has come to power on the promise of development, of providing jobs, of generating wealth.
This can be one of the... Okay, on that note, we need to end there. The fact that development will be the main agenda of Narendra Modi and as well as Nawaz Sharif should be the basis on which the relations could be repaired to some extent. Start repairing the relations probably. We will wait and watch how all this will develop. Thanks to all my guests, Musharraf Zaidi from Islamabad, Vivek Karju, Rana Banerjee and Vinod Sharma. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue on Big Picture same time tomorrow.